She was live streaming when the cops cuffed me, holding her phone up like she was filming a reality show, and yelling, "He's stealing our water. This man is stealing our water." And 50 of her neighbors were standing there watching, like I had just poisoned their kids. I had only owned that lake for 3 days, and I swear to you, I thought I was buying a quiet little nature preserve, a place I could protect birds and clean shoreline and all that. I did not know I had just bought legal control of the only water source for an entire neighborhood. But that is exactly what happened. My name is Rob Mitchell. I'm a land surveyor. I'm not a developer. I'm not some hedge fund guy trying to build luxury homes. I actually do this boring nerd thing where I care about wetlands and watershed maps, and I fight with zoning boards so that they don't bulldoze nesting areas. So when this 40-acre lake near a subdivision called Ridgepoint Estates came on the market, I spent 8 months pulling records, permits, conservation paperwork, all of it. And I finally bought it because I wanted to lock it up so no one could turn it into a strip mall. You know, something decent for once. 3 days later, I drive out there with my survey gear just to mark boundaries and figure out where I can put erosion control, and I get hit with this full HOA ambush. This woman I have never met in my life. Platinum hair. Designer sunglasses at 8 in the morning, phone up. Like she's doing a live broadcast to CNN, marching down the access road with 2 cops behind her and yelling like I'm already guilty. That's him. That's the guy he's about to shut off our water. And before I can even say hi, the officer grabs my wrist and says, "Don't move." Her hands where I can see them, and my tool bag drops in the dirt like I'm about to pull a weapon, when all I had was a measuring tape and a stack of environmental reports. The woman, and by now everybody in Ridgepoint has told me her name is Camila Williams, the HOA president, who basically treats that neighborhood like she's mayor. Keeps talking. She's not even talking to me, she's performing. She tells the cop, 300 families get their water from this lake. He's going to cut us off. He's holding us hostage. This is our water source, and the crowd behind her starts buzzing and filming and whispering, and I can feel that turn, that slow wave of fear that becomes anger. And let me tell you something, fear, plus an audience with phones, that is a weapon. I try to stay calm, because what else can I do in cuffs? And I say, "Officer, I bought this property as a conservation preserve. I have permits from Fish and Wildlife. I'm here to protect the shoreline." Nobody's water is getting cut off, and Camila laughs, like I told the dumbest joke she's heard in 20 years. And she goes, then, "Why does your deed include all riparian and watershed rights? Why does it have a federal stamp?" And that made me stop for a second. Because yeah, there was a federal stamp on the deed. I remembered seeing it at closing the attorney I hired said, "It was just routine for land with wetlands. Nothing to worry about." And now, here's this woman using the same language my lawyer used in front of cops, in front of 50 witnesses calling me a thief. The older cop, Miller, finally uncuffs me and says, "All right, I'm not seeing a crime here. This looks civil. You guys both need to get attorneys, but by then, the damage is done. Everybody's looking at me like I'm the outsider who just announced, 'Hey, nice town. You got here, shame if your kids couldn't drink water.' And then it gets even weirder, because in that same moment, a guy in a gray suit who'd been standing in the back watching everything walks up to me, hands me a card, and says, 'My name is Marcus Morgan. I'm a water rights attorney. I can help you navigate this pro bono,' which basically means for free." And I remember thinking, wow, lucky me. A lawyer just appears in the dirt, ready to defend me. like he's done this before. That was Act 1 in my life, me getting turned into the villain in under 10 minutes flat. Act 2 starts with the HOA emergency meeting. And if you have never had 200 angry homeowners staring at you in a packed room, while one woman with a microphone tells them you might destroy their property values, I do not recommend it. The Ridgepoint Community Center was standing room. Only people lining the back wall. People holding copies of what looked like printouts of my deed, like they had all turned into lawyers overnight. And Camila is up front doing what she does best, building panic. And she's saying, for 70 years, this community has maintained our water system. We paid for the pipes. We kept it flowing. And now one man from outside thinks he can hold our lives hostage. And you can feel people getting scared, because she's not just talking about money. She's saying survival. She's saying drinking water, kids, babies, showers, cooking. Like I'm going to walk over and turn a giant valve just because I feel like it. I try and speak like a normal person. I step up and I say, listen, I bought the lake to protect it. I am not here to pull out hoses and ransom anybody. And she cuts me off on the mic, looks right at the room and says, intentions don't matter. Legal control matters. And I'm telling you right there, boom, I felt the room leave me. Then Marcus, my brand new attorney, steps in, like Mr. Calm Voice of Reason tells everyone to relax. Says federal law allows something called an easement agreement. Says we can sign paperwork that guarantees the neighborhood keeps access to water forever. Says nobody is losing a drop. He talks smooth. He sounds fair. And you could feel people in that room start to breathe again. He even turns to me like he's protecting me, and for a second I actually believe this guy is on my side. After the meeting, though, I watched him in the parking lot talking low with Camila next to her SUV. Both of them leaned in close, not mad at each other, not arguing, just aligned. And at one point, I see him hand her a folded document, and she tucks it into her binder, like they've done this dance before, and that was the first time I felt it in my gut. That little no something here is off. The next day, Marcus calls me in and says we need to move fast. He lays this agreement in front of me and says, this is how we fix everything. This locks in permanent water access for Ridgepoint. It'll calm the HOA. It'll protect your conservation goals. It'll make you look like the hero. All you have to do is sign. And let me file. And honestly, on the surface, it didn't look bad. Like it said, the community keeps water. It said. I'd still own the land, but there was this one section in there, this tiny paragraph about waiving federal jurisdiction and transferring authority to local management. And I go, hey, Marcus, what does that part mean? And he smiles and waves his hand and goes, that's just standard language. It just keeps federal agencies from slowing us down. It's cleaner. If Ridgepoint manages their own access. Trust me, we don't want Washington in this. And then he hits me with the pressure. He tells me if I don't sign immediately, the HOA is filing an injunction in the morning, and I'm going to be buried in court for years. And I don't know if you ever felt backed into signing something you don't fully understand. But that's a special kind of panic. It's like somebody lighting a match under your stomach. So I call somebody who's not playing politics. I call Dr. Sarah Clark, a water rights historian from the State University. And I send her copies of my deed and Marcus's so-called solution. And within an hour, she's like, Rob, do you understand what you actually bought? And I say, yeah, I bought a lake. And she says, no. You bought the federally designated primary municipal water source for that entire township. And I'm sitting there like, excuse me. And she goes under a federal law from the 1890s. Whoever owns that lake legally controls all water that flows from that watershed, and that designation has never been revoked. And then she says this part real quiet. She goes, the Ridge Point water system that was built in 1952 was never properly cleared at the federal level, which means technically they've been pulling water off your land without authorization for 70 years. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what she said about Marcus. She goes, of that agreement he tried to get you to sign, the one where you waive federal jurisdiction that is not standard. That is how people trick landowners into giving up multi-million-dollar rights for basically nothing. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there with the papers in front of me, and this sick, heavy realization in my throat like, am I being robbed in slow motion? Is this whole thing not about protecting families, but about stripping me of something I didn't even know I owned? The next morning, a federal agent shows up at my property badge, out real calm voice introduces himself as Agent Daniel Hayes from the Federal Water Rights Division. And he says, Mitchell, we need to talk about your attorney's filing. And then he walks me through it. Point by point, like a teacher, he tells me, yeah, you legally control the main water source for around 300 homes. Yes, it's worth serious money. We're talking 8 figures over time. Yes, that easement you almost signed is invalid under federal law because you can't just hand federal water authority to a local HOA. And then he drops the hammer. He says, and by the way, Marcus Morgan, your lawyer did this exact play before in 1995 on this exact same property with this exact same HOA president. It turns out Camilla has been running the same playbook for decades. She finds out someone with land like mine is coming in. She stages a panic. Calls police, calls a meeting, makes the town think they're about to lose water. Drags in Marcus, as the calm problem solver pressures the new owner into signing away their rights for almost nothing. Then either the HOA or one of her developer friends scoops the benefit, and the owner walks away thinking, well, at least nobody hates me. When in reality they just gave up millions. And I realized, standing by the lake, I thought I was saving. I was never the villain in her story. I was the mark. So yeah. Act 3 is me walking into Marcus's office at 7:30 in the morning, shutting the door, dropping a recorder on his desk, and saying, let's talk about 1995, and watching his confidence fall straight off his face. And I'm not going to lie, part of me enjoyed that because at some point, you get tired of being polite about people trying to ruin you. I told him the feds were opening a fraud investigation, and he could either cooperate or get swallowed. And once he realized I wasn't bluffing, he folded. He admitted that Camilla had been doing this for years, admitted she blackmailed him into writing fake-looking agreements, admitted he knew. I had no idea what I was signing. I took that recording straight to Agent Hayes, and after that, things moved fast. Federal fraud conspiracy racketeering all of it. And a couple months later, I'm sitting in court, watching Camilla and Marcus hear their sentences. Marcus loses his license and gets real time. Camilla, the same woman who filmed me getting cuffed and told the whole neighborhood I was stealing water from kids, is standing in front of a federal judge while he tells her you abused your position. You weaponized fear. You endangered the security of 300 families. And she gets years of prison and restitution, and she will never run that HOA again. When it was my turn to speak, I told the court something I had been chewing on since day one. I said I could have cut off their water legally. I could have walked in here like the cartoon villain she painted me as and said, pay me or go dry, and the law would have backed me. But that's not justice. That's just flipping the leash. I said, I am not going to hurt innocent families just because I was hurt, and the room got real quiet, and for the first time in this whole mess, I felt like I had control that wasn't poison. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really answer this in the comments because I'm still wrestling with it. What would you have done in my place? Would you have charged them? Would you have cut them off just to prove a point? Would you have walked away from money? You technically owned for the sake of people who spent 2 weeks calling you a monster? Where is the line between protecting yourself and becoming the thing they swore you were? Drop your take below and tell me if you've ever had an HOA or any little local power person try to run your life like they owned you. Because I promise you, what happened to me is not just about water. It's about control and who gets to use it.